where in the darkness of the night, only the sound of the wind could be heard. The rest of the neighborhood seemed to be asleep. Daniel's house was in a quiet part of town, but for the past few days, strange things had been happening outside the house. There was a modern Ring doorbell camera installed on the door of the house, which recorded video as soon as it detected movement. The first time the doorbell rang, it was 3:17. Daniel and his wife Morgan were both fast asleep. Morgan woke up with a start when the doorbell rang. He picked up his phone and opened the app. "There's no one," he said in a sleepy voice. Daniel looked at the phone, his eyes meeting mine. Indeed, there was nothing in front of the camera. Maybe someone was walking by, or there was a glitch, Daniel said, and they both went back to sleep. The next night, at exactly 3:17, the bell rang again. The same scene again. An empty door, a silent night, and no one. Morgan's heart began to feel uneasy now. "Dan, this is not normal." At the same time, for 2 nights, Daniel laughed and said, "If someone is playing a prank, they will catch it soon." The third night, Daniel set the alarm. At 3:10, he woke up and opened the live camera on his phone. There was a light fog in front of the door. At 3:17, the bell rang. Daniel's heart beat faster. He zoomed in, but there was only fog. Then, for a moment, it seemed like a shadow stood right next to the door. The face was unclear, but for a moment there was an eye and a half smile. Daniel was shocked. Who was it? He played the video back, but this time the shadow was gone. Just empty fog. Morgan said nervously, "We'll tell the police." "No, let's wait another night first," Daniel said, as if he couldn't believe it. On the fourth night, Daniel turned on the lights and wanted to stand in front of the camera. If someone is playing games, it will end today. He turned on the camera and stood behind the door. 3:16, 3:17, the bell rang. Daniel immediately opened the door. There was no one in front, just a cool breeze and a light mist. But as he looked down, there were footprints on the wet ground outside the door, heading towards the lawn. Daniel watched the recording on his phone. This time, a face was visible in the video through the mist. The face was half of a young boy's face, half as if wrapped in smoke. Daniel's hands began to tremble. "This is impossible." Morgan asked in a frightened tone, "What happened, Dan? What did you see?" Daniel's lips began to tremble. "This is my brother Alan. He had been dead since I was 8. Morgan looked at him in disbelief. "Are you sure?" "Yes. That was the mark on his right cheek. I can never forget it." The next morning, Daniel called his father. "Dad, I saw someone last night. It was Alan." There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then his father's deep voice came. "Son, forget about it. Some things are never meant to come back." Daniel fell silent. But that night, the bell did not ring. The whole day and the whole night passed in silence. On the 5th night, Daniel thought maybe it was all over. He slept peacefully. But when he woke up the next morning, there was a thin line of blood under the door, stretching from the outside to the inside. Morgan screamed, "Dawn, it's blood." Daniel opened the door, and there were traces of blood on the ground outside, as if someone had stood there and spilled it. The doorbell camera was checked. At 3:17 a.m., another video was recorded. Daniel opened that video. Video I in the fog was the same face. This time, it was clearly Alan, his dead brother. A smile on his face, an emptiness in his eyes. He slowly approached the door and leaned over, touching something under the door, maybe blood. Then he looked directly at the camera, as if he knew Daniel was watching. Then he disappeared into the fog. Daniel's hands began to shake. Why was this happening? His grave. He immediately went to the attached garage, where he kept boxes of old memories. One box contained old family photos, including pictures of Alan. On the back of one of the photos was written, "Always laughed at 3:17. That was the time he died." Daniel's body shivered. "Dan, this is a spirit, maybe a reminder of a promise." Daniel barely said, "Or revenge." The next night, he decided to go out and see. At 3:10, he put on his jacket and stood behind the door. Morgan said in fear, "Dan, don't go." But Daniel grabbed the door handle. 3:17, the bell rang. Fog was gathering outside the door. Daniel slowly opened the door. No one was there. Then, a faint whisper echoed in the air. "Danny, why did you leave me?" Daniel's breath stopped. "Alan," he cried out in fear. A shadow emerged from the fog, a face exactly like Alan's, but the eyes were empty, like black pits. "You were dead, but you lived and I waited." Then a hand came out of the fog, bloody, and touched the door frame. Daniel pulled back, but the door closed by itself. Morgan screamed and tried to open the door, but it was locked. The camera footage only showed that the door closed and the lights inside began to flicker. Then the bell rang by itself, and a face appeared in front of the camera. Daniel's half of his face was clear, half hidden in the fog. The next morning, when the police arrived, blood was seeping from under the door. The house was empty inside. There was just a slip on the table, which read, "Now every night at 3:17, someone will knock on the door." And indeed, that night, when the police locked the house and turned off the doorbell from the outside, the bell still rang at 3:17. If you liked this scary story, subscribe to Cursed Narratives, where a new story is ready to awaken fear in your dreams every night.